Want to welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. We're going to talk about how to overcome your fear and anxiety and the other obstacles that keep you from starting and growing your Amazon business. I started this or put this webinar together because in my Facebook group, or one of my Facebook groups, I simply asked a question: what's holding you back? Is it fear? Is it money? Is it lack of knowledge or other? And we had a tremendous amount of responses. And I just started thinking that a lot of this stuff is very, very solvable. And I thought maybe we could put something together tonight and talk about it a bit and see if we could help some of you overcome some of those obstacles, because I very, very much would like you to get going in your Amazon business. And I think it's something that if you can overcome these, the rest will be downhill. So let's kind of get started here, and let's start out with just a question. What is holding you back? And I imagine each of you here have a different thing of what's holding you back, whether it is fear or lack of knowledge or money. And one of the things that I want to talk about, and I want to set a foundation for tonight's call, is talking about the mindset game. I'm not going to go all Tony Robbins on you. I'm not going to go all Zig Ziglar on you. I'm not going to go all that kind of stuff. But I want to try and impress some things upon you that I think will help you be successful in what you're doing. Because, again, I've been around a long time, been doing this a long time, and I think back to periods where I was successful, what was the common denominator. And, again, it's all about mindset. I think back when I was younger, I was actually a pretty good basketball player. And I can just hear my coach now when we're going out and we're playing basketball. He would talk about winning the mindset game. Now, we're, of course, kids, and all we want to do is go take the basketballs off the rack and just go shoot and play basketball. And I can hear him, and again, this just brings back memories of any coach, I guess, who wore the shorts and had the whistle around their neck. But they're always talking about playing the fundamentals. They're talking about practicing hard. They're talking about getting in game shape to be able to play well during the game. Now, when you're a kid, of course, you don't want to hear any of that stuff. You just want to go play, which I guess is really indicative of our society, to where you want to take a magic pill to lose weight. Very few of us want to do the work and exercise and eat well to lose weight. Very few of us want to do the discipline type of things to be able to build a foundation in which to launch our business. I think back when he was telling us when we're going to shoot the basketball, well, we're going to work on our defense. We're going to be mentally tough. We're going to be strong. We're going to spend time in the weight room. We're going to do all these things that are going to help us, that when the game time comes, we're going to be ready to go. We're going to beat the other people because we're more prepared. We have a much stronger mindset. And I think if you just think about that for a second, and yeah, all those cliches that coaches used to yell at us when we were kids, and they went in one ear and out the other. If you get a little bit older and a little wiser in life, if you actually just come back and listen to some of those, there's a lot of merit there. And I'm just convinced that so many people I see coming into this Amazon business, they want to skip all those things. They want to go right to the metaphorical ball rack, take the basketballs off the rack, and start playing basketball. And inevitably, your business is not going to be what it's going to be if you do that. And I know nobody wants to hear about mindset. That's not the fun part. I know you want to go shoot the basketballs. But I can't stress to you enough how important it is that you do the fundamentals in your Amazon business. You learn, you get confident, you practice, you do the things. The reason I tell people to start out small is for the very reason so you will have some confidence, and then you will learn what you're doing, go through that proverbial learning curve, and then get started. I see so many people who want to come in and try and do a $50,000 a month product, and inevitably their business collapses on themselves because they don't have the skill or they don't have the knowledge to be able to go right out and do that. And if anything, what's holding so many of you back here, a reason maybe you're attracted to this topic, is that you know you can do this. You know down deep that selling a product on Amazon is not that hard, but something's holding you back. So I would ask you to spend some serious time this evening, tomorrow, the next day, committing yourself to winning the mindset game, to going out and practicing, working on your defensive drills, all those types of things that relate to real life in your Amazon business. Well, okay, that's good and fine. You really got to think about the mindset game is much like building a house in this Amazon business. If you don't get all this stuff right, it will collapse on itself. I had a friend who was a custom home builder, and he built really, really nice homes, like $1 million type homes. And I asked him one day, I said, other than nicer fixtures and some nicer materials, what is it that makes a home like that so much more valuable than, say, a very beginning starter basic house? And without hesitation, he says, we built it on a good foundation. And he was really talking about the infrastructure of the walls and everything that went into the behind-the-scene things that you didn't see. He says the cosmetic stuff is good and fine, but all of the materials will last longer. The roofs will last longer. You're just getting better quality materials. And he laughed and said, you know, you can't build $1 million house on a $1,000 foundation. I think so many of us, when we start and look at this Amazon business and we hear stories of people doing this or doing all these crazy things, I think mentally we want to just jump right to the cosmetic part and build a house. It's kind of like the basketball game. We start and we try and build $1 million house on a $1,000 foundation, and then you wonder why you struggle. I mean, I see people who try and go off into restricted categories or complicated products or all these things, and then try and do all these elaborate shipping things. This is not a complicated business. People make this harder than it is. And again, I don't want to go off on this tangent forever because I know you don't want to hear me go off on this, but I can't stress to you enough, if you don't get this part right, you're wasting your time, effort, and money. So if anything that I hope that you can take away from what we're talking about this evening is I implore you to take a second. It's funny, my wife laughs at me all the time when she walks in my office and I'm kind of in a dazed look staring at a blank wall in my office. And by now she knows what I'm doing. I'm thinking, I'm creating, I'm trying to solve problems. I'm trying to get to the next level of whatever I'm doing. And I would implore each of you to take some time, and however you think, whatever situation makes you the most comfortable, go on that in this next day or two, this weekend. We've got a holiday weekend coming up here, I guess through most of the world anyway. Take some time and really decide and commit to what you're doing. Decide to win the mindset game, and I promise you the rest will fall in place. But anyway, that's important stuff. I could go on for hours and hours on that. I know you don't want to hear it, but I'm just going to trust you that you understand and accept how important all that is. Because again, not only is this the most important step, if you don't get a step right, you're wasting your time going forward. All right? Here's what we're going to really talk about this evening. If we've established that mindset's so important, let's talk about how to break through and how to get past some of those fears and anxieties and really what it takes to sell a lot as an Amazon seller. We're going to break down some of the tangible misconceptions and fears and anxiety that go into keeping you from being successful. And again, how the right knowledge and support gives you the confidence to succeed. We're going to talk about how to get started, an easier way to do that, and then we're going to do some question and answers at the end. And if you would, please hold your questions until we get to the end. I will try and answer as many as we can. We do have a full boat this evening, so I don't know if I'll be able to get to them all. It depends on how many we get, but I'll try and answer a good bit of them for you. If you type a question now, I may miss it. There are people who can play the piano and talk at the same time and all that kind of stuff. I can't talk and read questions and all that kind of stuff at the same time. So don't take it personally if I miss your question. For those of you who don't know me, many of you have seen me on videos or seen me at various places, forums, blog posts, etc. But my name is Mark Scott Adams, and I'm just creating and have my own Amazon business as a full-time Amazon seller. I've been a merchant for over 25 years, done an awful lot of business on and offline, pre-internet, as that goes, so even before it got so easy like it is now. But I have started and built several different businesses. One of them was a chain of clothing stores, a car bumper factory where we did specialized car bumpers, and then a winery. So I'm one of those people, I'm really good at starting businesses and getting going, but once they get to a certain point, I think they have value and then move on. I'm much better at starting and creating, I think, than getting to that stage where everything is systematized. So I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. As we heard earlier, we were chatting, I've had the good fortune to travel the world. When I sold my first business, my chain of clothing stores, I had the good opportunity to travel all through Europe and many of the places we mentioned a moment ago. So that was quite a bit. But now I do a lot of Amazon training videos. I'm in the process right now of starting a podcast, and that should be on iTunes very, very soon. So hopefully you'll be able to check that out. But in addition to selling my own products, I also help people create and establish their own brands and sell their own products on Amazon. And actually, I am going to China here in 3 weeks from the day of this webinar. There's something called the Canton Fair. So I'm going 20-hour plane ride and all, over and back, 40 hours on a plane, yay me. But going over and just going to do some buying and trying to establish some different things over there and maybe some good relationships with suppliers. But I do this full time. So I enjoy doing it, and I guess I've been a merchant for, gosh, it seems like forever, but I enjoy passing along some of that experience to people who are doing the Amazon thing now. Let's talk about one of the main concerns, which is financial. And I think the question is, this is really doable, all right? But this is very, very inexpensive. A lot of times people will come to me and say, I just don't have the money to do this. And that's fine. I understand that. But I think back to when I started with $400 and I got my first sale very, very quickly. After I got that all established, I made enough to cover that the first month. Then, as you see here, made a little bit of money the second month and about $1,000 the third month. And that's about what I'm doing now. I think back when I compare that to those clothing stores that I talked about a minute ago, my first clothing store, my first business, if you will, was in 1989, and I borrowed $150,000 to start that business. Now, if you take into account inflation, that's about $300,000 today. So, ton of money, and I borrowed every bit of it. I had leases to sign, employees, build out, fixtures. Gosh, it never ended. We were open 7 days a week, and I'm just sitting here thinking, in that business, you hope to clear about 10% of your overall business after all of your other expenses. Here, you're looking at clearing 50%, and Amazon is taking care of all the selling for you. So, wonderful scenario for what it is. So when I think about the money of this being a few $100s to start, gosh, you got to look in the mirror and say, I got to find a way to do it. Now, I said I started for $400. I have seen many people start for under $1,000, and some have started for much, much more. Now, one of the things you got to realize is you hear people tell you 5, you hear people tell you 10, you hear people tell you 200. There is no magic number. There is no set number. It's whatever you really choose to start with. My first product was 80 cents an item, and I paid 80 cents in freight for air freight. I got 250 items, and it cost me $400. So that's probably low, so for a lot of people, but some of you may be able to do it for much less. Now, a lot of people ask about promotion and say, okay, well, how much in promotion? As I have done this, the longer and longer I do it, really I've tried about everything imaginable, and I've really come back to simplicity, which is simply trying to give away items at a discount in exchange for a review and doing some Amazon PPC. If you include that as part of your initial budget and realize that when you give an item away, you've already paid for it in inventory, there will be some Amazon fees that go along with that, but it's really a nominal amount once you're up and running for your promotion. And then whatever your initial amount, you should be comfortable with it and make sure that you've got enough to cover not only your any Amazon fees after you pay for your first order, but make sure you've got enough items to get back in or get back in stock so you won't be out of stock anytime. So you've got to kind of estimate and plan that out. I mean, that's kind of the tangible and financial. But the reality of it is I want to do a little bit of tough love for a second. And I never want to hurt anybody's feelings, but here's the reality. Here I was at 20-some years old, begging, borrowing, stealing, and I'd be the first to say it was easier to borrow money then than it is now. But here I was borrowing $150 grand, $300 in today's money. And when somebody tells me they can't get $1,000, they're kidding themselves. They're fooling themselves. You're telling me you can't get a part-time job for a few weeks? You can't, you can't borrow money from a friend or family member. You can't put money on a credit card. Now, again, you got to be comfortable with whatever you're doing. But this is so inexpensive to get started that if somebody really comes up to me and says, I just don't have the money, again, tough love here, well, go find it. It's not that hard. It's not like you're having to raise $1 million in a day. This is very, very doable with the quantity of money that we're talking about. And I just don't think it's that hard to be able to put this little money in for a business that potentially could give you a 6-figure a year income. So the financial parts of it, that's really what I find most people are when they're starting. And I think it's very, very doable for you to raise $1,000. I mean, I look at this and everybody says, well, I might lose. I might not sell a single thing. Well, you can always discount your items and probably get your money back. So even if, let's just say you use that $1,000 as a working number, you could put that number in or that amount of inventory in, and even if it does end up being a good seller, you can turn around and discount it and sell it and turn around and sell it on eBay, and you probably at least get your money back. So even if you feel that's a stretch for you, your downside is minimum. So for those of you who are worried about money, I don't think this is a lot, and I think this is very, very doable. And I say that with hopes that you can look at it in those terms, because if you have that good mindset, that good foundation we talked about, you will start to operate from a position of abundance versus one of nothing. And even if you don't have nothing, you have to operate and believe that you have an abundance. This all comes back to mindset. If you really believe you can make $1,000 and come up with it, then you got to go out and get it. Anyway, all right, let's go to the next thing. The next thing is if you can get in this, what keeps a lot of people back is knowledge and the confidence to move forward. And that's really all that confidence is knowledge. It's funny. I think back to when I was in school, and I was one who was never a procrastinator, one of my good strengths. Lots of weak ones, but that was a good one. When an assignment would come out, I would do it and study and whatever else, and never really stayed up past 10 to study for a test. I'd go in and look as a test as a way just to show what I knew. But you look around the room, and this is going to hit home with some of you, but you stayed up all night, your eyes were red, you're cramming, reading those pages the last couple seconds before you just started taking the test. Well, I always did fine, and the people who typically studied like that, they came in, they had all this panic, they had all this anxiety, they hadn't won the mindset game yet, and they inevitably didn't do as well on the test as they could. All confidence is being prepared. There's plenty of knowledge and resources out there for you to be successful. The thing about this, if you think about this process, it's really very, very straightforward. You're basically going to identify a market and product, find a supplier, have them put your logo on it, send it to Amazon, promote it with reviews, and pay-per-click ads. Now, I don't know how people can complicate this. People inevitably do. But for somebody like me who was managing several hundred SKUs, which is stock keeping units or different items back in the retail stores, to manage a handful here is very, very easy. This is a 2-hour a month type of scenario, as checking your items each day, making sure everything's okay, and moving on and getting on with your day. Whether you have a job still or you want to do this full time, this is not a big thing. It's a very straightforward process. And for me, again, I don't know why people get nervous about this. There are a lot of resources out there. I put out a tremendous amount of resources. My podcast and the videos, in the very, very future, and depending on when you're watching this, you can just search iTunes for the Prime Report, which will be the name of my podcast. You can go to YouTube and type in Amazon private label selling, and you'll see all of my videos come up there. I have several videos there on training. On this webinar, I actually had a product checklist that was really designed to help you pick markets and products and tell you ahead of time whether something was worthwhile or not. And I think when you sign up for this webinar, you were able to download that. If you're watching this later or some other way, you can go to the website, which is markscottadams.com/free training. There's some free training videos on there as well as that product checklist. I actually have an Amazon private label Facebook group that's open to the public. Just go to the website there and you'll see a link to join the Facebook group, or you can just go to Facebook, I guess, and just type in, I think it's Amazon private label selling with Mark Scott Adams. And on my website, I do all different types of posts and different things. There's all types of resources out there. Of course, there are other people who have resources as well. There are a lot of things out there to give you confidence. I mean, you can use any of these to answer some questions and try and get going. Knowledge is one of those things that there comes a point where too much is enough. You see people become those professional students, and they're kind of scared to get going, so they keep studying a little bit more. I've been doing this off and on for 25 years, and I still don't know everything. I could do it in 150 years. I'll never know everything. But I know enough to get started, and I don't have to worry about knowing 100% of things. Forget about knowing 100%. Get going and learn what you need to do and launch your product. It's just, again, stop being sidetracked and come up with reasons that you don't know something, or there's one more thing you have to learn. No, there's not. Get your basic knowledge down and launch your bleeping product. It's not that hard. Don't get sidetracked. Another thing when it comes to knowledge, I get a lot of questions on is, what software do you use? Why do I need all these elaborate softwares? And I use one software currently. It's called Merchant Words. And basically, it's a research software. I think it's like $30 a month and well worth every penny. Sometimes you might find coupons out there. But it does research and tells you the amount of searches and different things, and tells me what keywords I want to use, as well as telling me what some of the words I want to use for Amazon PPC. But the thing about software, so many people want to rely on software as the end result. And all software should ever be as a tool. People get enamored with software. This is so simplistic that when all you're doing up here is finding your market and label and send it to Amazon, you don't need umpteen types of software to manage this business. This is something that, quite frankly, all these softwares are just something else you have to learn and something else that you have to overcome and work with on a daily basis. And quite frankly, they'll slow you down. Now, if you've got lots of things going and dozens of products, maybe that's fine. Maybe there's a place for it there to make it a little simpler. But for you getting started, just get started and forget about all these things that you don't need. Streamline it, make it simple, and go forward. To me, that's the biggest thing in this knowledge. It's not a lack of knowledge. It's just, it still goes back to some of the fear and some of the mindset things that we talked about a moment ago. But by just doing this, what I want to try and again is impress upon you in this section, knowledge is readily available. It's inexpensive to acquire. And especially in the world of the internet, you can find out almost anything instantly. So I would encourage you to, if knowledge is something you don't feel you understand things enough, just accept the simple premise. You don't have to know everything. I'm going to sit here and tell you I don't. There's a lot I don't know. A lot I do, but there's a lot I don't. I don't let that stop me. I mean, I'm trying to be more motivated by the possibility of success than the fear of failure. And that's something, if you take that as a poignant topic of conversation, that's something that you ought to add to when you're staring at the wall these next couple of days. Because again, whether it is knowledge or fear or whatever it might be, you got to be motivated by the upside of what this can be, other than that one less bit of knowledge that you don't have. Now here's the big one, and that's this fear. And I want you to know everybody has fear. The only difference is people who are successful, they just find a way to manage it. And I think that's something that surprises a lot of people. I have fear. I have fear all the time. Every time I do something of a business standpoint, I have fear. Years and years ago, when I used to start a business and I was ready to literally sign on the dotted line to sign a lease or commit to a loan or whatever I was doing, I could get nauseous. So I fully understand that. But over time, I've had enough or developed enough knowledge, and which has given me enough confidence and good enough mindset to know that there's going to be fear, but I can manage it. And that's the only thing that I implore that you think about, is knowing and accepting you will have fear. You'll go to sleep one day, well, I'm going to do this Amazon stuff. I found my product. And then you'll wake up one morning and you'll be scared to death. You will think the sky is falling, and like our buddy Chicken Little there, is you'll be looking up and waiting for it to collapse on you. That's very, very normal for everybody. And if you don't have that, there's probably something wrong with you, by the way. It's just, I implore you to try and manage it. The other thing people talk about when it comes to fear is, I'm going to get scammed. The Chinese suppliers are going to take advantage of me. How many of you there really have that concern? I imagine it's a good bit of you, and that's okay. But my experience in dealing with the Chinese suppliers has been very positive, very favorable. A couple minor cultural differences, but other than that, they all speak English. They speak it well enough to communicate. They're in this for their benefit as well as you're in it for your benefit. And if you put together a scenario where that win-win scenario, you're going to have a long and happy relationship with them. I think many times we think we're the only honest person and everybody else is dishonest. Well, I'll just flat out tell you, you got to get by that. Before I had this good fortune to travel all over the world, I mean, I grew up in a little small town where everybody was the same, and, you know, if you didn't come from there, something was wrong with you. And then it's like in every little town throughout the world, I guess. But before I traveled, I saw the differences. After I traveled, I saw the similarities. So I'm completely comfortable dealing with them, and I would encourage you to accept that as well. They're there to build their business just like they are to build yours. But when we talk about mindset and we talk about operating from a sense of abundance versus one of shortage, I want to tell you a story here. And I want to tell you a couple stories, personal stories that I hope you can relate to. When I had this clothing business that I was talking about, this is going to kind of demonstrate, you know, the idea, I guess, if you will, of operating from abundance versus shortage. If these were in malls, and yeah, people used to go to malls and shop, and I guess sometimes they still do maybe. But anyway, in that business, one of the big things you do is you try and put a display in the front of your store in the hopes that it will attract people who are walking by to come in and buy your items. Well, we had whatever was a hot particular item at the time, and I don't remember what it was now, but anyway, made a nice display, and then I went home, and I had managers running the business, that kind of thing, and when I came in the next day, our sales were up 20%. And it was all because of that display had been very, very workable. Oh, okay, this is good. That's the way it's supposed to work. Well, all right, the next morning I came in, and I noticed that the display had been moved back to the center of the store. And I thought, well, that's odd. Now, my manager, Todd was his name, he was a good guy, very capable. I entitled him to make whatever decisions were necessary. I asked him, I said, now, Todd, why did you move this display? He said, well, we had 2 shirts shoplifted. I was like, okay, well, as I looked at the numbers, we were also down 20%. Now, you know where I'm going with this story, but now granted, the shirts that I had taken from me cost me probably, I don't know, $10 maybe. I don't know, but somewhere around there. And I probably lost $200 in profit. Now, I obviously wasn't happy about somebody stealing from me, but basically by him operating from a position of shortage versus one of abundance, because he was so scared that somebody was going to cheat us, was going to scam us, it cost me $190 there. And, you know, I started thinking about that, and that's really when I got exposed to the concept of you got to think in a little bit bigger terms. Well, we moved the display back to the front of the store that day, and I came back in. Of course, the sales had gone back up, and I think I told them, well, let's just watch a little bit more. And I think we only had one shirt shoplifted the next day, and we had that display up for quite a bit and ended up making a lot of money. Because I wasn't afraid of the worst and saw some of the possibilities, I was able to make more money in that situation. Well, you know, I think since we're talking about fear of getting scammed and that type of thing, there are a lot of little subtle things you can do to help prevent that. And that's really, you know, that's just knowledge stuff. But I think you also have to go in the mindset with this is that these suppliers, they don't make money until you make money. They don't have any, why are they going to scam you? I mean, are you going to have something happen? Sure. It'll happen sooner or later. And you're going to have that one or two shirts metaphorically shoplifted. But if you've got your business up and running, you're going to make a whole lot more in the bigger picture. So please don't worry about getting scammed. The other thing about fear, people come in there talking about too much competition. Well, like the sign says there, I do believe that about you're your biggest competition. I think right now, Amazon is still in its beginning stages. Because we're in this all the time, we see that more and more people come into this. So it seems like there's a ton of competition, but I really don't think that there is. And I still think if you go in and you pick the right product, you pick the right market, and you're willing to invest in marketing and PPC and all this, and do it for the long term and build your brand as opposed to just trying to do it for a quick buck, you will bypass everybody. So I don't think that's an issue right now, because most people who come on Amazon are not your competition. They're going to, if they get their product even launched, they're not going to do the other things. If you'll do the things that I teach my students and we talk about, you're going to outdistance them in the long run, because it's get a good product and market the heck out of it. It's not that hard. As we said a minute ago, what was it? Identify a product and market, find a supplier, send it to Amazon, promote it with reviews, and then pay per click, market like crazy. Again, that's all that it is. Well, the other thing in this too is I might lose money. Well, we talked a little bit about this before, of more motivated by the possibility of success versus the fear of failure. There's a phrase in golf. And for those of you who golf, you may have heard the phrase never up, never in. Really where it comes in is that it means that if you don't putt the ball hard enough to get to the cup, it's certainly never going to go in. And I think that's the way many people approach their business. Now, of course, the downside of that phrase is if you hit it too hard, it may go way past the cup. However, I'd rather have it go way past the cup and never get to the cup in the first place. And again, that's where we come back more motivated by the possibility of success versus the fear of failure. And as you're staring at the wall with your homework assignment here over the next couple days, I want you to start thinking about that phrase. And I even put it in here because I think it's that important. Because if you, again, would you rather look at it as, hey, I might make several $1,000s a month. I might make a six-figure income, or, geez, I might lose a few $100s. And the reality is most people would rather not lose the few $100s. And that's just something from a mindset thing. You have to win that mindset part of the game. So that's kind of some stuff there. And one of the things that I want to tell you right now, I really debated on telling this story or not, because it's a very, very personal story here. But I think hopefully if you're going to take anything from this webinar, I want you to take what I'm about to tell you. I got an email the other day. And, I was on a rampage talking about somebody about doing things simplistic and overcoming fear. And I was kind of giving somebody some tough love. And I got an email that says, you've been doing this forever. And no wonder you have no fear. No wonder it's easy for you. And I laughed and said, well, one, it's not easy for me. It's easy because I work hard, maybe. But, yeah, I have been doing this forever. But I want to tell you a story, because in all of this, if you put all of this together, if you have the right mindset and you acquire the right knowledge and you understand that fear is just temporary and you can overcome all of that, you still have to have persistence. You still have to have tenacity. You still have to have resolve. And I am convinced that every person, I wouldn't say every person, that would be a stretch, almost every person has tremendous amounts of resolve that they don't know they had. Well, here's a story that I hope that you can take and will help you. When I started this clothing store, I was telling you about the first one I opened, it went incredibly well. I mean, I was a kid with very little money, borrowed everything. This is just this is wonderful. I'm starting. Let me take a bit of water here. Excuse me. I mean, this is going well. I'm making money. This is a good business. So the first thing I did, they were opening up a new mall in my town. And I went in and let me put another store there. Well, I was very young. I didn't have the ability to manage, and I had gotten by just because I worked really, really hard. And as well as my first store did, that's as poorly as my second store did. And to make a long story short, now, of course, the first store was $150,000. This one was $150,000. So, I'm in my mid-20s. I'm $300,000 in debt, $600,000 in today's dollars. To make a long story short, I closed that business in about a year. And for those of you who've ever had a business and closed it, it's kind of like the death of a family member. You're just in shock. You can't believe that it didn't work. You did everything the right way. You planned and it just didn't go your way. Well, all right. I remember I turned the keys back in, and I did not pay bills, or I didn't go bankrupt, anything like that. But I couldn't make the business work, and I paid to get out of everything, what little money I had left. I came home that day, and I obviously was full of anxiety and tremendous amount of weight on my shoulders. And it came to be bedtime. I went to sleep, tossed and turned for a couple hours, couldn't go to sleep. So I decided I have a 2-story house. I decided to walk down the steps and go in my den, dark as it could be. And I sat there. And I've never been depressed or despondent that I'm aware of, but if that's what it feels like, I think I may have been on that day. I slid down on the chair, and my back was where your feet are on the bottom of the couch. And I sat there for a second, and I'm not embarrassed to tell all of you, I cried like a baby. And I'm one of these people, I'm old enough that I don't believe men should cry. I'm not part of this new generation huggy-feely, touchy stuff. I don't think men should cry. But I cried like a baby. I mean, the only other time I had cried, I got hit with a baseball when I was 6 years old or something. But anyway, so I cried. And it probably was only a few moments, but it seemed like forever. I don't know if I just ran out of liquid or what it was, but I cried and I finally stopped. And then I sat there for a second, and I got really, 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 really mad that I had put myself in this position and I had let this happen to me. And I'm thinking, okay, after I stopped being mad, then like a lot of creative people who if you keep a pen and paper by wherever you are in your house to write down your ideas, well, I've always done that. So I picked up a pen and a piece of paper that was there on the coffee table, and I started writing. And this was a yellow legal pad. This was before iPads and all this kind of stuff. Actually, when you had to write with a pen and a piece of paper, I started writing. And I wrote, and again, I completely lost track of time at this point. But the old saying you hear where it's darkest before the dawn, well, physically it is, and metaphorically it is. Because by the time the sun had come up, and I had gone through all that darkness of the middle of the night, by the time the sun had come up, I had a plan. And the funny thing, you're going to laugh when I tell you this, what the plan was? Well, the plan was to go borrow more money. Well, I say have no fear, you got to go. So what I did is I went and borrowed $17,000, and I got a new piece of equipment that I knew would be worthwhile. And I got that paid off in about 6-8 weeks, with just some increased sales as I condensed back to one store and started getting everything going in the right direction again. And then I went out and borrowed another $40,000 and got some embroidery equipment. And I added that to my line of what I did and got that paid off very, very quickly off of that. So to make a long story short here, I had paid off all of that debt in a year or so, a little bit more than a year, I guess it was. And I ended up opening up other stores in like 7, 8 years later, I sold that business and retired for the first time at 35. So persistence, tenacity. And I don't tell you that story anything other than hopefully it's motivational to you. I've struggled. I've lost everything. I mean, I was down to a penny. I didn't know what I was going to do. And, but I had found the resolve to overcome my fears and move forward. And if I can do something like that, certainly you can come up with $1,000 and launch an Amazon business. This is 1,000 times easier than what I was doing before. We obviously didn't have the internet. We didn't have back then, if you wanted to scale your business, you had to open up other outlets and do other things. Here, you just order more. You just order 1,000 pieces versus 500 pieces when you start doing more business on Amazon. You don't do really any more work, and you add other products. But I tell you that story, and again, I just because I want to see people do well in this, and I hope you take what I said as nobody has a lock. It's hard for everybody. All these things from fear, all these things from motivation, and all these things, you got it within you, and it's just whether you choose to do it or not. And again, I don't want to go Tony Robbins, or if you're a little older, I don't want to go Zig Ziglar on you. However, I have come to believe as I approach the end of my business career, I got a few years left, of course, but as I get in since we're talking about golf, as I get in the back nine of this, I've learned some of the things that matter, and just stay focused and keeping it simple. Stay focused on solving your inevitable fears, or I should say managing them, because they're coming, they're part of it, and just keep going. Be persistent. You'll get hit with a metaphorical storm. And since you can't build $1 million house on a $1,000 foundation, you do all these things, you're going to have a good foundation. And then when that storm hits, your house, your metaphorical house, is going to last and sustain all that. So hopefully by tying in those three things, I am convinced that if you can overcome the fear, if you can overcome the knowledge and the mindset part of this, I'm just totally convinced that you can beat this Amazon game, because it's not that hard. Well, all right. So where do you go from here? Hopefully I've given you some insight. Hopefully, I mean, it's a little bit different webinar maybe than some of you were expecting. I don't know. But I wanted to get personal with you and share some things with you, because this is the stuff that truly matters. The knowledge is just details. You know, I can get that to you. But by preparing you this way, I think you'll be okay. This phrase that you see right now, you've seen that 1,000 times by now. You know that's where you are right now, and you've got to make some changes in what you're doing. You've got to readjust that mindset. You literally have to commit to success, because if you don't do it now, when will you do it? You know, many of you are tired right now from the commute that you just came home. You haven't had a chance to spend a lot of time with your kids. You're wondering how you're going to pay your kids college, or are you going to have enough money for retirement? Whatever it is, are the things that we all struggle with as we go through life. And I understand that, but you can change this if you really, really want to. I mean, this is not having to raise $300,000. They're raising $1,000 just to get started, and a little bit of time after that. So with all the things we've gone over this evening, all the information that's free that's out there, yeah, you can do some things and you can get started and probably be okay. But if you want to get started earlier, well, I have put something together that is what I call my FBA Head Start coaching program, or my training course, if you will. This is a program that I put together several months ago, where I put together everything that had to do with getting started as an Amazon seller, everything that I use step by step to help you launch an Amazon business. This is really the knowledge part of it. This is the part that will allow you to get a jump start, a head start on everybody else who's trying to just throw it against the wall and see what sticks. I put all of my experience and my knowledge in this, so in essence, you could rent and learn what I did the hard way. You could learn the easy way. What I did on this is I made it 4 different modules. The first module is all about finding the right product to sell. We'll go in and talk about different ways to do that. We talk about how to deal with suppliers, how to get the packaging done, and then how to get your shipments sent back to you. And all of those things, they're doable, but I kind of streamline and make it easier for you. The next module is setting things up the right way in Amazon. Step by step, I show you how to set your account up. And for me, as simple as that sounds, that's not the easiest thing in the world. There's a lot of little things in it that can trip you up. I show you how to get your product listed, how to get everything and ship your product to Amazon, how to get good photography, whether you want to do something yourself or whether you want to hire a photographer, however you want to do that. We talk about the type of pictures it takes to be worthwhile. And then we talk about how to drive traffic to your page by using the right copywriting, by using the right titles, the right descriptions, all of those things that will help you get your product listed higher in the sales pages so you'll get more sales as you go through. And there is knowledge that helps you do this better than the next person. The next module is really how we talk about marketing. As we said earlier, it's finding a product in market, getting it listed, and then marketing the heck out of it. So in this, I put in my entire promotional system of how to run campaigns, set up coupons, how to get positive reviews, all the things that matter when you're trying to market and increase your sales. Because again, marketing is a major part of this. The next thing in this is something that is what I would call a management module, where I show you how to operate and manage your business, how to squeeze out additional profit by doing things the right way, how to use the certain tools that you have are available to you, and then how to manage and run all your reports. And then we'll actually even talk, there's even a section there or a video in there where I talk about scaling up your business, because many of you may not realize this, is that when you have a physical brand, you've got a tangible company. You could take and sell this business to someone else who is in the industry, another company. You could sell it to your kids, give it to your kids. You could sell this to anybody who was interested, and then just cash out. And then you could just keep launching brands that you know how to do it over and over again. I mean, my personal strategy is to build a brand and sell it. I mean, as we talked about before, I have sold several businesses, and I always made more selling the business, well, depending on how long I had it, but selling the business versus just the time that I had the cash flow and ran it. So I would encourage you to think of an end result and work backwards when you're starting this. And we just go over that in that particular module going forward. The other thing in this is my complete outsourcing and resources guide. All the software, any tools, anything that I use in my business, I open that up to you. So you've got access to that. You don't have to go out and find it. The second thing in this is I have arranged for my personal photographer to be able to take your pictures for you if you want. He actually is an Amazon seller himself. He knows what to look for, how to set things up. And as being part of a group, he'll give you a $100 discount on his services. He does a good job. You, of course, can get your pictures done any way you want. You can do them yourself. You can use an iPhone. You can have somebody local do them. I mean, it's whatever you choose to have that picture done. But if you want to use him and do somebody who's experienced, save you $100. The other thing we have, which is a mission to our Facebook group, and I have to tell you, this group, I have had numerous people tell me that just being in the group itself was for them the best part of being part of our community and course, because we have a lot of people in there, very helpful, very willing to answer questions. I'm actually in there every day answering questions. The whole philosophy of that group is to give help to get help. And if somebody posts a question of how they need to do something in particular, you're going to have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 responses in a very short period of time. People offer to PM me back and forth and help and whatever else, and kind of with hope that you'll help them one day. So I'm very, very proud of the way our group has gone. It's big enough to have plenty of people to help you from lots of different backgrounds, but also too small enough where you know where people's names are. You don't get lost in the group. The other thing is we do group coaching once a month. We have a webinar where it's a members-only webinar, and typically we will take and do questions and answers, whatever somebody's working on. There will be a topic in there that we go over that's more of a tutorial or a training aspect of it, but we try and do that once a month as a members-only webinar and more of a group coaching type of thing. The other thing we do is Amazon really doesn't change that much, but if there are changes, I will go ahead and make updates in the course. So it's a lifetime type of scenario, and I'll update that as needed. And something, too, that I want to kind of impress upon you that some people don't realize the value of, but one of the hardest things to do is to get reviews. You'll hear a lot of people, oh, reviews are easy. Your friends, your family will do that. For those of you who are already started, already in the business, you go ask your friends and your family to do it. Oh, yeah, sure, I'll do it. A week's gone by, 2 weeks gone by. When are you going to review my product? Well, yeah, I'll get to it. I mean, we've all heard the phrase herding cats. Some obviously will right away, but you would think for giving somebody something and doing you a favor and taking 30 seconds, they would do it, but it's tough to do. So what I did is I used the power of our group. I actually have a background in forming some marketing co-ops. So I put the strength of our group together, and we formed some review groups. So if you want to come in and launch a product, we can have people in our review group. I mean, you discount it down to a penny, and then they buy it, and then they end up reviewing it for you. So those reviews alone are enough to launch a particular product and get it very, very high in the sales listings. And depending on how competitive a market is, it's going to give you a jump start to where you're on your way, and then you get reviews after that, and you're really, really good. Obviously, right now, most of our members are from the United States, but we just now have enough members as of this recording where we have enough members from the United Kingdom and also Canada to have separate groups for people who live there and sell in those particular areas. So with that said, I don't know anybody who does this, and just the value of this alone is just it's enough to launch your product successfully as is. So I don't want to overstate this. However, I can't overstate the value of how important this is, and the fact that you can get your product launched and get it up and running. If you do the course here, 30-day no risk guarantee. I'll be glad to give you money back if it's not what you think of the course. We actually have very, very, very few people do that. So people like the course. They're getting involved and they're launching the products. But if you have any reservations, I try to put that in there to make it easy for you. Well, as we've gone through this today, I have more people sign up for this webinar than any webinar I've ever done. So I don't know if I hit a nerve when it comes into talking about fear and the other things, because I think it's one of those things that nobody wants to admit. But when we look in the mirror, we know we have them. We know that we have reservations and anxieties. We all have those. So I don't know if you took this training tonight because maybe your fears are holding you back, or you don't have enough money, or feel that you don't, or that you don't have enough knowledge. And that's okay. You got to start somewhere. But again, I want to go back to what we first talked about. Building a good mindset is a foundation to make all this possible. So for whatever reason of how you ended up here this evening, you can do this. And this course is one of the things that will help you get there. Our Facebook group and other things as well. Well, again, for whatever reason, you have some options. You can do nothing. Everything stays the same. I want to make sure you do understand something. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge will give you confidence, but it's not power. If knowledge were power, I think all the librarians would have all of the power, wouldn't they? I think it's the execution of knowledge, and that's where, by having enough confidence and the right mindset, you will take action. So I hope that's something that you take to heart as well. So you can decide today hey, I listened to Mark's story, touching, all this kind of stuff, but hopefully I told you that with an end result in mind, and that's to get you off your padunkadunk so you can get started and join all the other Amazon sellers that are out there. Well, in this, okay, well, how much is the course, Mark? Well, the main course that many people have taken was started by a company called Amazing Selling Machine. It was $3,500. And for somebody who spent $150,000 20-some years ago on their business, $3,500 is not a lot, and it's well worth what they have. Because this is a business where you can make well into six figures. You can do it part-time. You can do it whatever level you really, really want. But that's not a lot of money for training. But where their course is $3,500, or I saw one at $2,000, I saw one at $997 the other day, I still think that's a ton of money for a course. That's less you can spend on marketing, less you can spend on research, on your products, on all of the things that help you be successful. So my course is significantly less than $3,500, and it covers the same type of content. So I guess really the question why is, well, I'm not an internet marketer. I'm just a merchant who sells online. And I put this course together because I had so many people asking me some of these questions. I just decided to put it in a course. My primary income comes from selling on Amazon and other sources I have, but primarily on Amazon. I don't have to charge $3,500. So although I appreciate their ability to do that, I just think that's a lot. So I priced my course significantly less so you can afford it and have some money to take over the other product or find products and get going in your Amazon business. And plus, I'd like to build a community of sellers, because one of the things that's kind of strange is when you're an Amazon seller, you really have a lot of time on your hands. So I kind of got bored, and I spend a lot of time now communicating back with my students and trying to help them, and that's a joy for me. So that was one of the big pluses in it for me. So again, the whole thing is, okay, all right, blah, blah, blah. What's the price, Mark? It's $297 or $397. Compared to $3,500, not a lot. When you join the course, you got two different options. You can join as a VIP member, or you can join as a Prime member. The courses are exactly the same, to where you get complete video training, you get the outsourcing and resources guide, all the bonuses we talked about, admission to the Facebook group, discounts on photography, access to the webinars and group coaching calls, and then the updates, and then also the review group. The thing that makes the courses different is if you do the VIP membership, it's the training materials. If you want to be a Prime member, I've arranged to put in a 30-minute phone call with you, Skype if you're outside the United States, but a 30-minute contact session, if you will, to where we'll talk about your business. And I do a lot of high-end coaching, and I charge significantly more than that for that amount of time. So what I did is I wanted to be able to put that in there to be able to answer any questions, because I didn't want to leave you out on your own. So again, if you've got a little bit of knowledge, and you'll have some questions of the Facebook group can be answered, even on something like this, then you'll be fine. But that's what the difference is. One is $297, one is $397. And then in that 30-minute phone call, we'll talk about anything you want. Now, I can't help you pick a product, but I can help you choose between products. I can give you my opinions on, is this a good market? Is this a good product? Do you have your profit margins right? I can help you review your marketing plans. Basically, anything that you want to talk about in regards to building your Amazon business, we can talk about during that session. So I don't know a whole lot of people who do something like that where I'll talk to you one-on-one, and really I think that's a very helpful thing to you to be able to do that. But again, either option would work out great depending on what your needs are. To go ahead and get the course, you can go to FBAHeadstart.com. That's the name of the course, and you can go ahead and get that. Now I think it's time for questions and answers. And obviously I'm of an age where the Riddler, this is my Riddler, and I guess every generation has their own, but I saw this, thought this was a funny picture, so for questions and answers. But let me see now. Let me just start pulling out some questions, and I'll see if I can take some of those. All right, I see some of you jumped the gun here and put some questions out, so let me scroll in to see if I can find those. Okay. All right, let's take a question here. And what I'll try and do is just maybe first name. So I'm not a big fan of exposing people on webinars. I have no desire to do that, but let me just kind of read these as they come. And as they come in, like I said, we'll just touch on these. And again, don't know if we'll get to them all, but we'll go as long as we can. Dave says, I'm worried that this whole thing is going to get too saturated. I'm still moving forward and getting ready to make my first order, but it's something that worries me. Your thoughts? Well, Dave, I think you're right. And here's, when I was in school, I was actually trained as an economist. And what I spent a lot of time doing was studying emerging markets, studying macroeconomic theory, and basically how markets mature, really more for corporate levels, but the same concepts really apply here. The Amazon market is no different than any other market. If you can remember the bell curve, if you ever took a statistics class where it was kind of low at the beginning and peaked up at the top and fell off at the bottom, kind of looked like a big roller coaster, if you ever remember that. I remember I struggled in that class, but the thing that I took away from it is that at the beginning of the curve is where you have all the early adopters, where you have people starting to get into the business. My personal belief, Dave, is that we're still at the very beginning of that big bell curve. Eventually, the Amazon market will mature. You'll have more people come in, and like all things, it will consolidate, and then prices will probably drop. One of the things that I try and tell my students is that when you pick a product, try and think of not just as a product, but think of an entire brand, because those who are going to be around when all the dust settles, and I think that's several years down the road, I still think there's plenty of time to get in, the people who have brands and can be more price competitive, those are the ones who are going to be left standing. I think back to, I don't know how, it depends on how old you are, but when cell phone companies started coming around, I guess it was in the late 1990s, early 2000s, whenever it was, you had a lot of smaller companies. They started merging. They started coming together. Some went out, some built, some ended up being what was left. And that's what happens in any market. But regardless, that's a way off in the future. And obviously it could be tomorrow, it could be in 3 years. I don't have a magic crystal ball. So nobody knows the timing. That's like somebody trying to pick stocks, but you can tell what's coming given enough time. You just don't know when it's coming. But and if anybody tells you they can say it's going to collapse or it's going to change on a certain day, well, obviously they can't do that. But anyway, Dave, I hope that answers your question off of that. And for all of you listening, because that's a question about competition and one of the things we addressed here. And again, to go back what we talked about, Dave, if you pick the right product and market and do everything the right way and market the heck out of it, well, people are going to be chasing you. You're the competition, right? So that's just basically how you win. All right, Jason says, biggest challenge for me is sourcing a high-margin PL product that won't get saturated easily for months, years to come. Well, Jason, one of the things I try and tell people is that there are lots of products out there available. And again, I personally think we all put too much emphasis on that area of the business, if you will. Again, I think it comes back to marketing. If you do better packaging, if you have better pictures, and you continue to raise the bar, if you will, I think you'll always be one step ahead of your competition. For instance, I'm actually going to China here in 3 weeks from this recording. I'm going to the Canton Fair, and I'm going to go and do some buying and get in front of some suppliers and see if I can get better pricing and better terms and different things. So, I mean, obviously you don't have to do that by any means. I just want to go, and I want to see how it will develop, because again, I try and put some of my time and effort into staying ahead. So again, maybe margins won't be what they are now in the near future, but if you get established, Jason, every time you get a review, every time you're there, that's like a brick wall around. It's like building a castle, like a brick wall around your product. So get going now. Be one of the people who's left standing when it's coming. And again, I think that's a way off. I don't think that's happening tomorrow. I think it's a way off. Dave got who says, searching the prime report on iTunes and it's not seeing anything. I'm in the process of getting that started now, Dave. So hopefully by next week, I'll have that up and running. I do have some videos that are on YouTube. And literally what I'm going to do is take the video or the audio out of those and put them on iTunes. So if you want to go to my YouTube channel, which is just, you can type in Mark Scott Adams and it'll probably take you to, I think it's Mark Scott Adams 1. I think it's my YouTube channel. Just go and type that and you'll see everything there. Actually, it's in a playlist. Okay. Kevin says, boy, Kevin, a lot of typing here. Good for you. Says, hey, Mark, I tracked down some products, ordered samples, and had some initial failure. I'm going to be picking up the flag and running again. What would you suggest as someone that has really tough time finding a niche? I want to discover my market and learn from there. Any tips? Please include whatever may seem obvious as well as some things that the average Amazon seller wouldn't be privy to. Thanks in advance. You know, Kevin, I'm going to tell you something, and it's going to sound incredibly simple. One, I applaud your effort for getting back on the horse after falling off, because believe me, I know exactly how you feel. You know, I told you earlier. This is about mindset. This is what I would tell you to do is ask yourself, what did you do in the first place that didn't turn out the way you wanted? Learn from that and move forward. There is no magic of a way to be able to do that. Really, it's just you got to keep going and plugging away, because you can launch 10 products. Your 11th product might not work. But, you know, the thing of it is even the best research sometimes doesn't always work. And I know that sounds counterintuitive to what we're talking about tonight, but that's why you got to launch multiple products. You can't be dependent on one product being your sole source of income. And again, that's where coming back, and I would encourage you to consider a brand, Kevin, as opposed to just a product. And I hope that answers your question, because again, the reality of all this stuff, there is no magic bullet. There is no magic answer. I'm telling you to lose weight by diet and exercise. I know that's not exciting. I know that's not sexy, but we all know that's what really works, all right? All right, Jason says here, hi, Mark, I've seen people selling their PL barbecue silicone gloves, but it's become oversaturated. They just put their logo and call it PL. Then you have to spend a bit of capital in marketing to make sales. Does a good PL product have to be uniquely different from others? I don't want to compete with 700 sellers selling the same thing as barbecue gloves. Well, Jason, that's one of the things where research comes in. So when I talk about picking a good market, picking a good product, you have to have that. I mean, part of this is intuition, and then part of it is how to do things. I mean, you can go to my product checklist and see about picking products. But, you know, if you think there's, quote, 700 sellers in the market, that's probably not where you want to go. But where I think also, too, that it's becoming a little bit more way to go, and you don't have to do this by any means. Part of the reason I'm going to China is to see if I can have some very unique products made that no one else will have. And if they do, they'll just have to copy me down the road. But I think, too, again, most of this comes down to marketing, Jason. Most people, when they launch an Amazon product, they go in and become drug addicts. They literally become on the most powerful drug in the world, which is hopium. I'll launch my product. I hope it works. Well, you got to get reviews. You got to constantly do things. You got to contact sellers and thank them. Yeah, there's some work involved. Most people won't do that. And if you'll find a good product and bundle it or make it a different color or make it unique or make better packaging, better pictures, then you got a really, really good chance of standing out. Randy says, being the owner of a manufacturing business that didn't go as well as he wanted, he finds it hard sometimes to dream. What changed in your mindset to look at the future? Sitting there crying on the floor like a baby. You know, I don't know what else to say. Is I just, you know, there's not a person in business who hasn't had a setback. And I've always thought that people in business, if you think back, at least in the United States, only 5% of people are self-employed. 1 out of every 20. And I always thought that I was tougher and I worked harder and all those things, and I didn't deserve to lose a business. But, you know, in the long run, Randy, it made me better. It made me smarter. It made me, for those of you using my product checklist, when I started doing research on Amazon, I basically had a yellow legal pad. I wrote down ideas that just looked good to me. And I realized and knew that my strength was that I'm creative and I pick things on emotion and on intuition. I needed something to balance or to create the analytical side to my creative balance. So I created that product worksheet or product checklist, I guess. And again, my product checklist was a yellow legal pad. And ultimately, by all the failures I've had, Randy, and I've had things not go my way, I think ultimately it made me stronger. It made me more determined and more resolved. And it also made me more experienced, because I think there's value in learning what not to do as much as there is in learning what to do. So the only thing I can say to you, Randy, is that I feel your pain. I understand the as I said earlier, and you'll identify with this, when you close a business, it's like losing a family member. But, you know, the old expression about getting it back up on the horse, man, what a better time when you overcome those obstacles. You walk around like you're on cloud nine, because there's such a sense of accomplishment that you took life's best shot and you beat it. You know, that's just, again, all of you. This is mindset. This is mindset. And you got to beat that. There's not a one of you out here who hadn't had difficulties. You can do this. All right. Jason writes in, with product photography, can I just use an iPhone or an iPad? I don't have a good SLR camera. Sure you can, Jason. I mean, you can do anything you want. Many people use iPhones. I mean, I used to, when I told you I owned a winery, I did a video podcast right back when YouTube came out. And I went and bought this $2,000 camera and all this elaborate lighting and all this kind of stuff. The iPhone I have right now sitting on my desk that I paid, whatever we all paid, $200 for it, whatever it is, that's a better camera than I spent $2,000 on a few years ago. However, I would tell you this, Jason, along the lines of product photography is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 to $500. Oh, I don't want to pay $300 to $500. Well, okay. What you're going to find is that it's not the camera, it's the lighting that makes good product photography look good, and then having some Photoshop skills. If you've got all that, then by all means, go for it. But I just am a big believer that, again, so many people will go and they'll find a product, they'll get it labeled, they'll get it listed. It's like running a 100-yard dash and run 95 yards of it and then stop. So I'm just a big believer that if you stop without getting good professional pictures, you're being penny wise and pound foolish. So I would implore you, Jason, to consider getting product photography. It's not that expensive, especially when you consider how much you can make in the long run. All right. Hey, Willie. Says, hey, Mark, what is a fair payment schedule to establish with a factory once I'm ready to manufacture my item? Well, in that, there is no standard. However, if the closest thing to a standard is you may want to do 30% up front, maybe the balance due when the product's finished. You might be able to do a payment midway in there somewhere, and then the remaining balance when you're finished. You will find certain suppliers may ask you for it all up front. Again, it goes back to what your confidence level is in dealing with that supplier. And as I told you earlier here in this webinar, I haven't had any issues with suppliers. I found the Chinese people to be, the ones I've dealt with have been wonderful. So it's not something I worry about. But again, one of the things I would encourage you to do when you're dealing with suppliers, they got to make money too. You know, they're in business to make money. And as long as you have a win-win scenario, there will be a time you'll need them. You'll run out of inventory quickly. I remember my Christmas sales on one of my items were more than I anticipated. And I thought I was going to run out about the 20th or 15th or 20th, the prime week of selling. So this was, I don't know, first week in December or something. And I called them and says, look, I'm in a bind. I underestimate my sales. Can you get this stuff to me? They stayed up and got my order done to me and got it to me. And normally it took them like 3 or 4 days to make the order. They got it done in half a day and got it shipped out. Says, thank you for your business. We appreciate it. We're glad to help you. I mean, how about that? So that's the kind of stuff that by being, and I'm worried, and people worry about getting scammed. I'm just sitting here thinking how I can pay them back for, yeah, they made money on it too, but they did it to be helpful. That's what I'm going to take anyway. So anyway, long-winded way to say, whatever you're comfortable with, well, is what's fair. But again, 30% up front seems to be the norm. Chris has a question, says, can I use eBay to test? And Chris, I think that's a good question. Let me give you my thoughts on that. To me, I mean, and that's a common thing that some people want to do. And I understand the logic in that. I have a little bit of a different idea. eBay to me is more of a, I don't want to say a lesser market, but people who are there are looking to pay less for items. More, I don't want to say yard sale market. That's not what I mean, but discount market maybe is a better way to phrase that. Whereas Amazon, people are going to buy new national name brand items, and it's a full price, regular type of market. And to me, it's a different type of shopper. And maybe you might want to get rid of some samples there or something. I don't know. But I think taking the results from eBay, Chris, to me, it's a different, it's comparing apples to oranges. And because something sells or doesn't on eBay, I'm not so sure that that's reflective of what's going to happen on Amazon. So I hope that answers your question off of that. I mean, for a lot of times, if you're getting a trial or sample order, sometimes you just got to put it out there and see. And, if you can launch a product for less than $1,000 and know that if it doesn't work, then maybe you put it on eBay and you reduce the price and sell it, you don't have a lot of downside. So, go from there. All right. All right. Tom has a question here. I started already a web shop for the last year, but now after learning about Amazon, I realized I started on the wrong end. But now to choose a product that fits into the same niche, Scandinavian design. Do love IKEA, by the way. It's like a amusement park or furniture store at the amusement park. Okay, it's very, very hard. Shall I maybe just think outside the box and do something totally different under the same brand name? Well, Tom, that's something that depends on whatever your preference is. I don't think there's a right or wrong there. By the way, I think as far as an order goes, I think you do kind of start out on Amazon. And if you want to evolve this business into eBay, and again, if you ever want to sell it, to have another source of income coming through your own e-commerce site, I think it's a wonderful thing. It makes your business very, very sellable. But depending on what all of your costs and everything else is, I started in something that I knew, but again, in retrospect, I didn't have to. So if you want to think of a different item, the only thing I would say is whether it's this item or something different, Tom, is look at it as can you scale it into other items? And again, will everything coordinate as a brand other than just a hodgepodge of items? So hopefully that will give you a little bit of help in answering the question there. All right. Hi, Charles. It says, should I start out with an LLC or will a DBA be okay? And DBA means doing business as. Charles, I'm a big believer that there's so many little things that people get caught up with in the beginning that an LLC is one of them. You can add and change and update this stuff at any time. And the same thing, Arthur has a question in the next thing about should I be worried about patents and trademarks? Well, and that kind of stuff. All this thing, just get started, launch your product, go through the learning curve, because when you start, your product's probably not going to draw enough attention for anybody who's going to do anything to it anyway, and you're certainly not going to get sued. I have corporations, but I've been doing this a long time, Charles. But I mean, if I were doing this now and just starting today, I would start out as a sole proprietor, DBA as you're talking about, and just launch the product and see where it takes me, and then form a corporation down the road. Arthur's talking about trademarks, where he says about dealing with overseas buyers. One of the things that you do have to understand about China, Arthur, is that they don't respect trademarks. They have different laws. They have different rules. It's a different culture. Before you really worry about the trademark issue is not so much about from the manufacturer standpoint, I don't think, because as Amazon sellers, as much as we look at this as a big business, I mean, you're not going to knock off somebody who's selling 200 items a month. I mean, really, that's not even worth duplicating. Maybe 2 million items a month, that kind of stuff. Those are the issues where you really have the theft going on with that type of thing. But at the same time, maybe more the issue is there's something called the brand registry in Amazon, and that help protect your brand a little bit. Getting into all that's a little beyond the scope of what we're doing here tonight, Arthur. But actually, go to my website. I've written a blog post on the brand registry, but also too trademarks. Just so you'll know, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of $350, $400. Those used to be, when I looked at getting a trademark in my wine business several years ago, they were like a couple $1,000s. Obviously, the internet has dropped that price dramatically. I have started to reposition my thought process on that to where I think trademarks are good because that keeps other Amazon sellers, not so much suppliers, but other Amazon sellers from trying to duplicate your efforts. That cease and desist letter will make a big difference in that. But again, not something I would do day one. Get your product launched, get it up and running. You can add that stuff later, Arthur. All right. Woodbine 12. Obviously, that's not a real name, a good name though, regardless. Says, hi, Mark. Well, hi. Chris says, cool. Tom says, thanks. Okay. Mr. Bine here. Woodbine, it says, hi, Mark. The thing I can't reconcile is how to get a low price from the supplier, but also get low enough quantities to ship direct to Amazon. I have to buy a larger quantity than to Amazon to get the price. Well, here's the thing in this is that here's some terminology that you can use. When you're going through Alibaba and you're doing your sourcing and all those different types of things, you'll see on there many times where they will have high minimums. One of the things that you got to do, you got to negotiate, and really you want to be polite. You never want to. I mean, when people negotiate, well, this is horrible. I don't like you. That's not the way to negotiate. That's this amateur stuff. Be polite. Say I'm interested, but for this to work, I need the price to be this. They're going to know. Say no. Go back and forth, and you got to be ready to walk away. And it's amazing how many times I said, "Thank you for your time and effort. I just cannot make money at that price," and I'll let it go. And then I'll get an email a day later. Oh, kind sir, we have reconsidered. So, you just got to keep going until they say no, and then keep going again until right before they get upset. And that's just an intuitive thing that's in our culture, we don't negotiate except buying a house and buying a car. That's why none of us are very good at it, right? We don't do it all the time. But all negotiating is having the nerve to ask. And they may tell you no. And they may tell you to, quote, stick it, whatever the Chinese term for stick it is. I don't know. Maybe I've been told that before and they were smiling and they didn't know it. But regardless, just all the prices are negotiable. Don't take their first or second or maybe even third offer, and you'll be fine. All right. Akbar says, cool. Well, I'm glad you're here. Glad you appreciate it. Thank you for being here, Akbar. One more says, would you trust, Tom says, would you trust an Alibaba sourcing company which is not gold rated? Well, yes. The way that gold rating works is those suppliers actually buy that rating. But if you think about that for a second, that's an expense that they're not going to put in unless they're a legitimate company who's been there a while. To me, I think it's important. It's just one of the many things that you choose. What I like is if they respond to me. I'm big on just the communication part, but that's just me personally. So, typically the gold suppliers, it's their own rating, but I think typically they're better. If one is not gold rated, Tom, doesn't mean that they're a bad supplier. It actually might mean that, gosh, it's hard to talk for an hour or so straight. I don't know how teachers do it all day. But it also might mean that they're a small company, and you might find that small companies are easier to deal with because they're more anxious to have your business. So I don't think there's really a whole lot of reasons to rule somebody out. You just got to go through and ask questions and go through the process and do all that type of thing. So with that said, I don't see any more questions, so I think we hopefully got through everybody's questions. Well, I'll wait another second or two if somebody wants to post one, and we'll get out of here on this evening as we start a holiday weekend here in the United States, and I guess throughout most of the world anyway. So we're getting a lot of people coming in here. Tom says, good point. Carol says, thank you. Thank you, Carol. And again, those of you in my group laugh at me all the time because they know I can't do two things. They know I can't. I'm not a tech guy. And I mess stuff up all the time. They know I'm not a detail guy. And they know I can't pronounce people's names. So I'm just going to spell this one. S-V-E-T-O. And I don't want to begin to pronounce that because I don't want to mangle your name. I don't want to be that discourteous to you. But anyway, the question is, what's the best way to pay on Alibaba? One of the things that I like that's a little bit different is go to AliExpress and see if you can find the same company there. For those of you who don't know, that's the retail side of things. They may have something where it shows they take a credit card there. And if it shows they take a credit card on AliExpress, they won't list it on Alibaba, but you know that they really do. So when you email them, you might be able to pay them with a credit card. To me, that's the easiest way. The other thing is you might want to try PayPal. If something ever does happen, you got some buyer protection there. You'll see terms like I also written another thing on the blog post talking about banking terms like wire transfers and all that kind of stuff. Go there and look for that blog post. That will go and explain all of that as well. Getting lots of thank yous here from Scott. Thank you. Welly, thank you. Daniel, no. Will there be a recording from Chris? Yes. Yeah, I'd be laughing out loud too, Daniel. Thank you. Way under if you really want to know the truth. Should be more. Mike says thank you. Rachel says thank you. I'm gonna try and pronounce his last name, and then everybody can laugh at me, and hopefully he won't get mad at me here. Apostolavoski. I probably mangled that. Please forgive me. It's all in good fun. Sveto, I'm hoping is his first name. Gosh, if everybody's name were Bob, I think I'd be okay. Woodbine says, thank you. Have a great weekend. You too. Thanks, Mark. Helpful. Glad to be here. Jason. Thanks, Mark. Very informative. Joe. Mr. Sveto is laughing. He's saying he's been very good. So thanks for having a good sense of humor there. Charles says to be signing up soon. Thank you, Charles. Welcome to the community when you're there. Anybody have any questions on the course before we check out? Frank says, gracias. Thank you, Frank. All right, we'll give it a few seconds to make sure nobody has any questions on the course. Angel says, thanks, Mark. Awesome job. Gosh, thank all of you for being here. For all of you who will be here in a late evening on the for what it's worth category, I truly, I enjoy this community stuff. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy helping people. And when people thank you and what you just, on the human level, you appreciate it. So thank all of you for being here. Thanks for your time, Mark. From Chris, thank you. Welly, have a great weekend. You too. All right, let's give us about another 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. I saw a question about a replay. We'll see if we can get that out tomorrow. Sigmund says, thanks, Mark. Great information, and I'll go forward to start with Amazon now. You made it easy to do this. Well, thank you. Sigmund, thanks for bringing back memories of my trip to Munich in the Hofbrau house. It says, hi, Mark. How many UK members are there? 10, maybe 12. I don't know exactly, but somewhere in that range. Mike says, will you have an in-person training course? Probably next spring. And right now I'm looking into some of the details of that, Mike, but we're not a huge group. I don't go out and try and bring in tens of gazillions of people into this course. It's just me, solo entrepreneur type of thing. So obviously you have to have a certain number of people to make that feasible. But regardless, that's something I hope to do because I very, very much would like to meet and do this kind of stuff face to face with people. And I think that's coming. I just don't know the time frame. But good question. Great question. Akbar says, is basically he's asking, is the course digital or is it DVD? Akbar, everything is online. You have instant access once you come in. There are no DVDs or workbooks, and I know I use pictures like that, so I guess that's my fault. When I put those up there, I didn't think about that, but it's all video, all digital. Tom Tan says, thank you. Have a great evening. Sigmund again says, have the best time. Hope to see you soon. Mike, great job. Dinesh, Mark, sir, thank you. Akbar, many thanks. Well, folks, again, I thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you appreciate the stories that I try to relate to you because you can do this, and it's not that hard. So I'm very, very anxious to hear some of your success stories going forward because I know there's some of you out there going to give them to me. So again, with that said, everybody have a great evening. Everybody have a great weekend, and best of luck on all your Amazon business. Talk to you soon.